So we're ready? Okay. So welcome to Prophetic Table Talk. We are coming to you live in different places. We're not in the studio tonight, but there's so much going on this week. We had a lot of requests. I had emails and texts asking me what did I think about this and what was going to happen. So we decided to do a Thanksgiving special. Maybe we can answer some questions, and we appreciate you asking us. So we're going to start out with the latest headlines in the news. Connie, if you'll take over.
Okay. Do you want me to start from the 25th?
Mm-hmm. Let's go backwards. We'll just
All
go
right,
back.
we're going to go backwards. Okay. We're going to start on the 25th. We have got, let's see, this is very interesting. I don't understand this, I'm sure, along with every other American. But we've had a major legal shock happen today. A U.S. district judge has actually dismissed the criminal indictments against James Comey and the New York Attorney General Letitia James. I don't understand that. However, Curry, who has ruled that the U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan, who was actually installed by Pam Bondi in September, was actually unconstitutionally appointed. Therefore, turning all of her actions under her into unlawful exercises of executive power.
Wow.
Really big deal.
So he's just saying the attorney can't do the case, so he's going to throw it out.
Mm-hmm. Now, Comey's case actually could be dead permanently because his 5-year statute of limitations has expired. Now, Letitia James still faces a 10-year window, meaning that the case can be refiled by a lawfully appointed prosecutor. Now, the White House obviously has come back, blasting the ruling as partisan, as being a technicality, lawfare sort of issue. Now, the fight is far from over, and the DOJ is already processing an appeal. So most certainly we will wait to hear about that.
Yes.
And then Trump has actually accepted Xi Jinping's invitation to come visit in April 2026. And Trump is saying it was a very good phone call with him. Now, the key topics that were discussed were the Russia-Ukraine war, China's responsibility in the fentanyl crisis, also a potential boost in U.S. agricultural exports, and reopening the stalled trade channels. So we've got that. We've actually talked about some of the things and the monetary value behind some of the commodities that China was wanting to purchase.
Yeah, I'd like to be a fly on the wall when they discuss the fentanyl problem.
Wow. And then we've got 6 Democratic lawmakers, all veterans or ex-intel, releasing a video urging U.S. troops to refuse illegal orders and follow the Constitution. Good idea. Trump immediately labeled it seditious behavior, punishable by death. Now, Pete Hegseth is also echoing him, branding the group as the Seditious Six. But there is a legal twist with all of this. Only one of them can actually be prosecuted under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Senator Mark Kelly, who is a retired Navy captain, is still receiving his military pay. And Republicans say the oath to the Constitution has to mean something. I think we would agree with that.
Yeah.
And then Rubio is calling for Geneva talks, the most productive yet, on Trump's Ukraine peace plan. Now, Rubio met with Ukrainian officials And Trump has a 28-point plan to actually end the war. Now, Rubio did say the meeting was the most productive and quite meaningful since Trump has taken office, with negotiators making Ukraine and Russia having signaled openness to continued diplomacy. Of course, there'll still be all this back and forth. Democrats and European allies say the plan concedes too much to Moscow. The administration is actually setting a deadline for the Ukraine response. And I actually saw where, speaking of that, on the 27th, 2 days, Zelensky is set out to meet Trump for supposedly finalizing this peace deal. So we'll see how that goes. And Trump has ordered a start of the Muslim Brothers terror designation process. Now, we already talked about this before, how they were going to formally designate it as a foreign terrorist organization. This has been debated for years, but the administration is really pushing it forward. Texas recently designated the Brotherhood and CAIR as terrorist groups under state law. Egypt, the UAE, Jordan, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia have all banned the Brotherhood. Congressional momentum is strong with bipartisan support for sanctions and asset freezes. If this is all finalized, it would reshape the U.S. counterterror policy and dramatically increasing scrutiny of Brotherhood-linked networks in the United States and abroad. Any comment on any of this?
Well, I can tell you this, with the Muslim issues that are coming up, it's the radicalized Muslims. And of course, what we see on the news is Dearborn, Michigan.
Yeah.
We see everybody talking about Dearborn, but there's some unique facts about Dearborn, and that is, number one, per capita, they have the highest birth rate of anywhere in the nation. Number one. Yes.
Wow, they're outpopulating us.
They're outpopulating. I think I actually saw the figures. They're 3.6 to 1 outpopulating us. Number one. Number two is Sharia law. There is nothing legally in the United States that stops them from implementing Sharia law. The only thing that can stop them is every individual state has to rule Sharia law to be illegal. Governor Abbott in Texas has done that.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that he has done that is because the single largest Muslim population is in Texas. It's actually not Dearborn, Michigan. But nevertheless, what Dearborn, Michigan has done because of the high birth rate is now they are awarding their citizens $4,500 for every baby they have.
Oh my goodness.
And mind you, this is not American citizens. These are actually immigrants that are being awarded the $4,500 for every child that they have. And so they are facilitating the accelerated birth rate. One of the many ways that they're doing that is, according to Muslim law, one man can have multiple wives and have multiple kids with each wife. That is one way that they're doing that. And the other way that they're doing it is they're also increasing property taxes and increasing taxes in Michigan, specifically as well in Dearborn, in order to gather money from Michigan people that pay their taxes in order to send that money to Somalia.
Mm.
And it is currently on record $2.7 billion in Michigan tax money has been appropriated and sent to terrorist groups in Somalia. Literally. And I
Wow.
mean, this is stuff you can actually go look up because the Trump administration is currently filing charges and they're investigating all of this right now. So even though you have the investigation, you have all this stuff going on, you also have, we're talking about, we're talking about walls. Remember Walls that was VP pick for Kamala Harris? That's his territory. He's the one pushing this. He's the one behind this.
Hmm.
So if you want to see where the Democrat agenda is, look at the man that they're using, Governor Walls, and how they're using him to push the Democrat agenda to outpopulate Americans, to literally, and for lack of a better terminology, breed Americans out. Literally breed Americans out. It is also, English is no longer the major language that is spoken in Dearborn. It is actually per percentage and per capita it is actually the second language spoken. So with Farsi and Arabic being the first language, that is considered the number one leading language in Dearborn, Michigan. And so this little tiny epicenter is basically their test ground. This is their test run. This is what they're pushing. And so this is what you can expect throughout America as they are pushing this extremely hard.
Wow.
And I don't think that we have the proper fortitude to actually stop them at the moment, because I don't think enough people are keeping up with the information enough to say, hey, this is wrong. This something has to change. And you have so many of your quote unquote Christianese people that are just so open and accepting, and you're supposed to accept people how they are, and you got to accept them because that's just how Jesus accepted them. But yet, when the wealthy man came to Jesus and asked him, what it took to enter the kingdom of heaven, and he said, "Go sell everything you have." He wasn't telling him to physically go sell him stuff, all of his stuff. He was basically telling him, you have to do a paradigm shift in order to make this work.
Hmm.
And it's not going to work. And Jesus did not accept him as he was. He told him to go change his mindset, change his paradigm, and then you'll be accepted.
Hmm.
So this whole Christianese thing that the churches have taught, to accept them just as you are, is a bunch of crap. And that's
Hmm.
just what it is.
Well,
So,
that's good. I won't jump on the bandwagon with you and agree with you, because when you actually go into the Hebraic language and the Greek language that the Bible is written in, and take it from English words into their words, has so much different meaning and so much more meaning
mhm.
than oftentimes we give it, and it changes your way of thinking when you get into the Hebrew Greek and you see what Jesus is really saying. Go look it up before anybody sends it. But you can post anything. You can send me a comment down there. But still, go look it up. Just start taking your words and looking it up in the original language. Blue Letter Bible is one of the best Hebrew Greek lexicons on the internet to go to.
So I want to ask a question. I'm going to go back to, are the Michigan residents paying this $4,500 per child?
Yes, they are. The
Their
Michigan
tax money?
residents, that's where their tax money is going. It is going to pay that. And funny enough, they are taking it from different places. One of the major places that are actually pulling and they're defunding is the farming industry in Michigan. And just like in many, many states, people don't realize how much our farmers actually produce here in America.
It's true.
The farm production is actually higher than it's ever been. So if you're pulling that money from the farm production in order to facilitate this, then all of these subsidies for farming goes away, and inadvertently it kills farmers.
Wow.
And if you've been through Michigan, you'll know the backbone of Michigan is still the farming industry.
Mm-hmm.
Hundreds of thousands of acres of farms. So
So do we hear of people fleeing Michigan like we do New York and California?
they are, but it's not the newsworthy thing, because it's not New York. It's not the big city of New York, but it is actually happening.
But my understanding is that from the stock market in New York to Dearborn, Michigan, it's less than 4 seconds that they exchange information because of all of the, like the Ford Motor Company and all that's located in Dearborn.
That is correct. That is absolutely correct.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
and just as a kind of a scope, so you can kind of see this, Dearborn is basically part of Detroit.
That's true.
A lot of people, you hear Dearborn, Michigan, and you start thinking, small town. It's
Mhm.
not. It's a part of Detroit. It's only a 15-minute drive from downtown Detroit to Dearborn. It's a community it's one of the small communities that actually surround Detroit, Michigan. So Dearborn is basically, when you're saying Dearborn, you're specifying a specific city, but in reality, you're saying Detroit. So,
Amazing.
that's like, for instance, that's where the Henry Ford Museum is in Detroit, is actually in Dearborn. So
Mm-hmm.
when you hear people say, "Hey, we're visiting the Henry Ford Museum in Detroit, Michigan," that's actually Dearborn.
Hmm.
So
Wow.
it's not this way out in the middle of nowhere city that doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
They're right there in the epicenter.
They
Mm-hmm.
are
Mm-hmm.
very much so.
The difference that you have with Dearborn is most of the people that are fleeing are going to places like Lansing, places like that, which is still only an hour drive. So remote working, things like that. So it still works that they're moving out, but they're not skipping the entire state like people in New York are.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well,
Ruth Ann, did you want to talk about Susie Wiles as far as Joseph's
I did.
news?
I did, but I want to go something before we leave the news. I want to go to 1124. And Bo Pomey released a statement. He said, "From this day forward, um, God will bless you." And that was yesterday. He
Hmm.
said, "The great wealth health transfer begins." Haggai 2:18 through 19. Then he went on to say, on the same day, yesterday, the great wealth transfer and silver explosion will be directly tied to worldwide volcanic eruptions. And that goes to a prophecy. I know the volcanic eruptions goes to a prophecy. Well, in Ethiopia yesterday, a volcano erupted for the first time in 12,000 years. And I got that. It's 1, 2, and 3 zeros. That's 12,000 years. Now, I don't know how they figure 12,000 years, because anyway,
Yeah,
but
I would love to see how they figured that out.
there's a
I
huge
agree.
volcanic eruption. There was a huge volcanic eruption yesterday that happened in Ethiopia. And the Ethiopian eunuch and all of that is tied in the Bible. And Keturah, Moses, Keturah, actually came out of Ethiopia. So there's a lot of ties into the Bible with Ethiopia. You want to
Well, let's
comment about
think about it. If you follow Bo, he has this 421, 124 sort of calculation. And I'm thinking, even though it was 1124, you still have a 124 in there for yesterday as
right?
far as what you're talking about. So I do think that's quite significant.
I think it is too. Shane, you got a comment on that?
No, I'm good with that one.
We're watching this one. Where is silver and gold now? Right now, Shane.
Well, silver and gold right now are actually through the roof. Um, we're looking at gold at roughly 4,200, silver at $52. The What we're having is we're having more and more people because of the kind of the bickering going on in the feds amongst themselves, and the fact that they're trying not to drop rates in December and the fight that's going on in the Feds, people are getting a little bit leery of some of the markets, and the US bonds are getting a little bit harder to sell. So people are kind of pulling out of the bond market and wrapping their investments in gold in order to kind of secure for a possible no rate change in December. If we do have a rate drop, then I would expect gold to pull back a little bit, probably to again the 4,000 level, because that's kind of become our floor for
Mhm.
gold. And then you would see the markets go through the roof. If we don't have a rate drop, then it would be the setup for the absolute opposite, where you would see gold go up 44, $4,500 an ounce, and silver in possibly even in the 60s. And then at the same time, you would see a market drop heading into Christmas. And in my opinion, we've had sufficient market pullback the past week with the government reopening and all of the PMI and reports coming out, and employment reports, unemployment reports, new employment, all of that came out. We had a major pullback in the market. And as far as I'm concerned, it was a much needed healthy pullback. And then from here, we are continuing upward. As you can tell with the S&P 500, the NASDAQ, Dow Jones, and everything is continuing upward. So it's a real good healthy pullback. It's liquidity injection and then a push back to the upside for the markets. But in order to hold on to that, we've got to have at least the 25 basis point rate drop in December. You know, everybody prefers a 50 basis points. Trump still wants his 200 basis points rate drop. But nevertheless, you also have to, when you're looking at the markets and you're looking at gold, you're looking at silver, you have to look at the entire scope of the project, right? And you have to look at it from Trump's point of view. And I'm going to give you a little bit of that right now. You have to look on the fact that that printing press for money is turned back on because the banks were running dry. So
Mm-hmm.
the printing press is run back on. The banks are no longer having to go to the repo market to get loans. And then we have the illegal immigrants that are being pulled out of the country. We have the only population that is actually growing currently is not the American population. In fact, our growth rate is 1.2. As far as an American US citizens, growth rate is 1.2. So that is literally basically stagnant. That means for every American, there's only that American being replaced and 0.2%
Wow.
being replaced after that American passes away. So
Wow.
there's your scope. So when you're printing money and you have a population that is shrinking, you're getting rid of illegal immigrants. That shrinks the population even more. The population percentage actually gives the value to the dollar as well. So if you have a lot of money, but yet fewer people, then that is the perfect storm for inflation like we've never seen in history. That would make the Great Depression look like a cakewalk.
Wow.
And it is so important when you understand it from that perspective, the perspective that Trump actually sees, where he sees the population, he sees the fact that we have to print money or we're going to have a bank run and banks are going to shut down. We're going to have a crisis and it'll be basically unrecoverable at that point. And the only population that is growing is basically illegal immigrants or people that came here, quote unquote, illegally. And I'm going to use this for an example. You have a lot of the Indian population that comes here, and they come here, quote unquote, legally, but they all change their last name to Patel. Why? Because the only way to legally get here through the legal process is have a family member sponsor you. So if you change your last name to Patel, then there's your family member. There's your long lost cousin that you've been looking for. and you get brought here by your long lost cousin who you've never met in your life, who is actually of no relation to you whatsoever. But as far as the U.S. government is concerned, you provide the documentation that you guys have the same last name, the same family, and boom, you come here legally. So you have both sides, illegal and quote unquote legal immigration, that is actually being used against the U.S. government. Now, if we don't actually start some type of population growth and we don't get rid of this blue haired and pink haired phenomenon and actually start getting some real people with real backbones and that want to live out the American dream, if we lose our dreamers, we will lose America. But if we reignite the American dream, and this is what Trump is trying to do, and it might not look pretty, and it doesn't in a lot of ways. He might not be doing it like you and I would, but nevertheless, he is trying to reignite the American dream. If you reignite that American dream in the people in America, then they want to start a family. Then they want to accomplish that American dream. But you got to give them a path to do it. And that is what Trump is fighting to do, is give the Americans the path to reignite that American dream and the path to actually go after that dream. And this is what the Democrats are actually fighting. They're not fighting the quote unquote, we're going to take America down. They're fighting the fact that we don't want dreamers. We don't want the American people to dream again. So what did they do? They did their famous thing where they take a word and they take over that word and they make it a bad word. Like, for instance, the rainbow. What did they do? They took over the word rainbow, they took over the rainbow, and now they've made it a bad thing. And now if you talk about the rainbow, you have to be really specific that you're talking about the rainbow that God meant as a blessing and a promise, and not some pink-haired fruzy that doesn't know right from wrong and left from right. So they have taken over the word dreamers for the illegal immigration. And you see how they're doing this play on words. And so they're taking over that word dreamers, using it for illegal immigration. So they're inevitably they're trying to kill the American dream. And in doing so, you reduce the American population, you increase the population of the Islamic people, you increase the population of the people that are here only to give and only to take and not give. And then you have a population of slaves that you can control. And that's literally all they're doing. And and as long as they're backing our economy in a corner in order to force more money to be printed, it's just literally providing the pathway for their plan to come to pass. Is exactly what it's doing.
Wow.
So we have to kind of understand that this is not a this downfall did not happen overnight, and you're not going to fix it overnight. So what Trump is doing the next 3 years, that makes 2028 elections extremely important.
It does.
You
It
know,
does.
I like JD Vance, but you know, we need somebody in there. We need a Senator John Kennedy after Trump, where he'll just tell them like it is and tell them to take a long walk off the short pier, and if they don't like it, we don't care. You know, we need that type of person in there that will come after Trump and just literally is like, if you don't like it, I'm sorry, I don't like you either.
Remember that, folks, when you start thinking about 2028. JD
Yes.
Vance does have years that he can be president.
Yes, he does. He does have years that he can be president, but I'm not saying he's not the man for the job. That his personification has yet to be presented publicly as to how strong he is actually going to be. Then, and in fact, this whole thing with Charlie Kirk and Erica Kirk has done nothing but hurt him instead of help him.
That's right.
So we're kind of dealing with this kind of situation with JD Vance right now. So I'm not saying no to JD Vance, but I'm just saying we need to make sure whoever gets in there has a backbone in 2028. And then that falls back to the 2026 elections as well, where we have something coming in that's, and I know I started with markets, but I'm telling you, this stuff affects the markets. Just so you know, we have 38 House seats that'll be open in 2026
That's
from
right.
people that are resigning or not running. They're from, yeah, from representatives, U.S. representatives, congressmen that are resigning. It's not just Marjorie Taylor Greene. She just made headlines.
Right.
We're
We want
talking
to talk
16
about that.
Democrats, but we're talking even worse than that. 22 Republicans are not running in 2026, and people that have held that seat.
Wow.
So you have to be you have to pay attention to what's going on in politics. But with the people that are not running, I'm not sure if they're not running because of Marjorie Taylor Greene, because something happened in the background and they've got to get out of Dodge before they get implicated and get pulled in on it that they were in on, or if it's a strategy in order to get somebody else in their seat in the Republican Party. But usually it's never a good thing when you have the economy sitting kind of like it is right now, where we're kind of on that teetering point, and you go into an election. It's usually never good to go into an election like that with the economy like it is right now and expecting the same party to hold that seat.
Okay. So give us the figures again. How many Republicans and how many Democrats
We have
resign?
22 Republicans and 16 Democrats.
Okay. We're going to get into a prophecy that might give us some answers here in just a minute. We're going to talk about it.
Hmm.
Yes. Okay.
So
I'm going to go ahead.
no, so I'm just saying, economically right now we're doing really good. We just got to keep the feds working with Donald Trump and in Donald Trump's favor, you know, and get that uh, at least a drop in rate in December. And if that's done, then that will actually activate the next step of Trump's plan and getting us pulled over more to the USD1, which is the American cryptocurrency for the US dollar.
Mm-hmm.
And we're actually in the process of that right now with our group, where we are actually utilizing USD1 right now currently, and we are utilizing it in the way that Trump intended it to be utilized, where as you purchase USD1 cryptocurrency, then you take that USD1 cryptocurrency and you place it into a holding, kind of like putting your money into a CD, so to speak. And then the U.S. government takes that quote unquote CD. So I'm going to use that CD terminology because most people can understand that easier than they can all the crypto terminology. Okay. So they take that and they actually use that as collateral against the U.S. debt. So what we have been saying, that Trump is going to use cryptocurrency in order to offset the U.S. debt, is already happening. Currently, right now, we're looking at about roughly $18.7 billion has been taken off the debt clock via this process. And this is brand new, like this month, brand new process put in place. And the cool thing is as an American citizen, if you hold USD1, you put it in the CD form that is designated for USD1, you earn interest on your money that's actually collateralizing the US debt. And so the debt payments, those those interest payments that the US has to make on their debt, instead of going to the feds, go to the people. Do you guys understand what that means? So
Mhm.
instead of making those interest payments to the feds, Trump has made a path for those interest payments to come to you and I. And
That's
then what you can even do is you can even loan against that CD because of the interest coming against it, up to 80% of the value of that CD, and you're taking a loan against your own money, and the interest pays the loan, and it's tax free.
Wow. That's the best part.
That's the
It
best part. So Trump's plan is already laid in place, and it's a point of lowering that interest rate at least 25 more basis points, and then we can go to phase two with USD1, and you will see after the first year, you will see this process take off.
Hmm.
So, and like I said, with our clients, we're currently doing it in-house right now, and then we've already got a small handful of clients that are already in holding and waiting to do the same process as well. So it's a very similar process to, you guys are familiar with XRP. I know everybody here is. It's a very similar process to what we do with XRP, where we take XRP and it's called staking. We stake that at XRP, and then we're able to make interest from that staking, and as well as we can collateralize that stake and actually use that money to purchase things. We can use it to purchase more cryptocurrency, and we can use it for buying power and leverage. And you become your own bank at that point.
Hmm.
Well,
Wow.
we're going to let you do a whole show on that one.
Oh, it's more than a show. I think it would be an entire series just to understand how to do it.
Maybe that's what we need to do.
Yes.
Well, I want to skip over here to this Benny Johnson clip that's out here, and then we're going to lead back in from this into talking about these resignations some more in a prophecy. Okay. But
Mm-hmm.
Joseph Z, you could look him up, or you can look up Benny Johnson. Joseph Z picked up Benny Johnson's clip, and what Benny Johnson has out, I think it's as of yesterday or even today, he is talking about the voting and the stealing of the 2020 election. And both clips that I watched on Benny Johnson and Joseph Z are saying we can't forget it. We got to go back to it. And the prophet Robin Bullock has been saying we can't forget the 2020 election, and Trump hasn't
Mm-hmm.
forgotten it. But what was unveiled that and the question is, how does this connect with Venezuela and what Trump is doing in Venezuela? Because there is supposedly for U.S. pressure on Venezuela more military pressure than it's already been. Well, I'm going to follow my notes here. It says Dominion voting system and Smartmatic origins and ties. Smartmatic was found by 3 Venezuelan citizens in 2004 and actually tied to their leadership, who is Maduro. Okay. So basically, pre 24 briefing elections, but before this 2024 election, actually, Susie Wiles did not really go with the thing of the election being stolen, but they had a meeting at Mar-a-Lago that was arranged by Senator Mullins and Perdue, and they wanted to meet with Susie Wiles, and they presented her a detailed technical briefing presented by Patrick Bryan, Bryne, and Gary Bernstein. Susie, after hearing what they presented, gave the green light to go ahead and look into it, but she requested one person to look into it, and that was Elon Musk. Okay, so once actually Elon made a few phone calls. After requesting, he came back and his words were, "We have a problem. It's true." Then publicly questioned Dominion's usage patterns at the October 17th, 2024 Pennsylvania rally. So they did publicly question all this. That the core technical claim is Dominion's IP addresses identified and verified, accessed, allegedly acquired via Bitcoin from an anonymous Japanese account. Senator Mulling reportedly enabled transfers of data to cybersecurity teams, allegedly strikes on Dominion's cyber office 3 days before the 2024 election, rendering computers inoperable. So actually, there was a cyber attack on Dominion. Election day uncertainty principals positioned abroad were in Switzerland to prepare to flee if the efforts fail. But actually, what happened was prevented the election fraud and saved the U.S. election and the outcome favorable. The outcome that was supposed to favor Kamala Harris went in Trump's favor, which we know that. So the source in Venezuela, ruling circles claim Maduro ordered the 2020 U.S. election rigged. Trump's aware and pursuing hot and cold action against Maduro, including military pressure and checkpoints. Now, some of the things that were proved to have happened in 2020, for an example, in the state of New Jersey, suddenly New Jersey had 500,000 new voters in one election in 2020. That is a lot of new voters in one state for one election, but suddenly where did they come from? These were the type of things that was happening. Susie Wiles did not support it, but once Elon verified it, Susie Wiles jumped in and supported it. So there's a lot more than drugs tied to Venezuela. It is the election fraud. In fact, over the last 20 years, according to this report by Benny Johnson, I don't know, I did not verify it. So I'm going to take Benny Johnson and you can look it up. He said Maduro has helped rig 72 elections. That's a lot.
There's a lot.
That is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that is interesting for some of the things we're leading into. And so you can see on the screen, a company accused of election fraud in the U.S. would have been financed by Venezuela. Wow, that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Connie, which way do we want to go next? Do we want to go exactly to Amanda Grace, or which prophecy do we want to look at next?
I just want to mention something because Marjorie Taylor Greene is so in the news, as we have seen. We know that she and Trump were in a cat fight. And we saw where she did publicly indicate that she was resigning on November the 22nd. One thing I do want to just put out there that I find very interesting, Shane, you might be able to speak into this, but she really had a problem when Donald Trump was going to meet with the Syrian president. They met for nearly 2 hours. This was on November the 10th. They met in the Oval Office for about 2 hours, marking the first ever visit by a Syrian leader. Now, what Marjorie Taylor Greene was so irate about was that up until just this March, he was wanted by our government, had been wanted for years with a $10 million bounty. And she indicated that he is, she didn't say was, is an Al-Qaeda terrorist. So she really had a problem with all of that. So I don't know if you can speak into that, Shane, or if that's just, if that's, I don't really know, but she just got up in arms about that.
She did, and I want to be absolutely honest with you. When you're dealing with Marjorie Taylor Greene, you have to look in the background as well, just like you do every congressman and every congresswoman. You have to realize that 5 years ago, she came into office, net worth of $400,000. She's currently got a net worth of $40 million. Now, this is in part due to her family's construction company, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's just kind of interesting, all the contracts that they got awarded. So she hasn't been using the insider trading, quote unquote, standard as Pelosi does,
Right.
but she has been using a system that we've always dubbed the good old boy system, where you wash my hands, I'll wash your hands kind of system. She has definitely been using that system because there's no way you make that much money in 5 years profit that you've been running this construction company and then suddenly it's $40 million profitable overnight. Um, and it just happens to line up perfectly when the moment you take office.
Mm-hmm.
So I think she's like a lot of congressmen and congresswomen that she's got some stuff that she doesn't, some skeletons that she doesn't need coming out of the closet.
Mm-hmm.
And she also sees the fact that the fight is not going to go the way that she thinks it should go.
Mm-hmm.
And that's her main thing, because if you listen to her resignation, she was talking about there's no 4D chess going on. There's no plan to save America, all of this kind of stuff. So she's really down and out in her resignation video that she made.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really just from one perspective. And that's just from her perspective. And that's because things are not going her way.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I really believe that that's what we're dealing with, is basically it comes down to the reality of there's not a cognition test in order to become a congressman. And so you get a lot of people that have 8-year-old, 9-year-old, and 10-year-old issues and mommy and daddy issues that they haven't overcome, and everything's got to go their way. And so that's really what we're dealing with, is this pity party that it's not going her way.
Well, I want to throw something in here, and this is from Amanda Grace, and this is from the
Hmm.
Prophecy. And Amanda says on X, there's an account called Ariel, and I'll spell it in case I didn't pronounce it correctly, Ariel, stating that Marjorie's ex-husband has Taylor Construction, which
Hmm.
has business ties to Jeffrey Epstein. So Amanda is really questioning why. I mean, immediately she resigns. She pushed for the Epstein
Right.
files, and immediately she resigns after that's approved by Congress. So
Hmm.
she goes on to say he allegedly partnered with shell companies tied to Epstein's brother, Mark Epstein, on a Palm Beach house flip projects. Okay.
Hmm.
So the court sealed documents from a 2019 Florida civil suit, partially unsealed in 2024, represents Marjorie Taylor Greene as an entity, as a silent beneficiary in the three partners. A $250,000 wire transfer ended up in her campaign consulting account in 2020 from an Epstein estate executor with direct ties to Ghislaine Maxwell's legal defense firm. Just
Hmm.
so. So, and then she went on The View to do her complaining and apology. She went over to the other side. Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
Did she have Epstein ties?
Mm. Wow.
Just so.
It's a possibility. In today's world, I mean, literally, you can't you can't take a chance with anybody. At this point, you know, it's like I've told the story quite a few times. When I was in Washington, D.C. and went to work on a project, just a small project there, and it was interesting that I went to a little Italian restaurant not too far from the Capitol, and while I was there, literally at the same restaurant was Nancy Pelosi and her husband and all the people, all her staff people that worked in her staff. And at the same time, sitting at the same table, which Ms. Mitch McConnell and his wife and all of their staff people. And they're all having a good time and they're all working together, including their staff people.
Mm.
So, meanwhile, if you look at what happened earlier that day, they were basically calling everything, including a dog and a horse and a cat and a pig and everything, you know, live on C-SPAN, right there from the House floor. And here we are, they're actually best friends. So after seeing that, I've told this many times, and I've actually said it on here many times. After seeing that, I don't put anything past any of them. on being involved in anything.
Yeah.
So I think it's when they get there, they might have good intention, but they also get there and they realize they're in the middle of a swamp.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a point of, eat or get eaten. And if you're not big enough to eat them, they will eat you.
Wow. Wow.
So that's some stuff you wanted to put out in. Oh no, go ahead.
Well, talking about Marjorie and Epstein, and we think it might be a good thing. We've got Trump's decided, yes, let's do it. Let's release them. I'm telling to release it all. And then I hear Clayton and Natalie Morris talk about how we think it sounds good. We know that was overturned. We know the vote was substantial. But they continue to talk about how, irrespective of what appears on the surface to sound good, that they can classify this as a new investigation, that they can start everything all over again, that they can redact whatever they want to redact. And
Mm-hmm.
that goes along with what Congressman Thomas Massey has also indicated as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a hot mess. And they've brought in the fact that Jay Clayton, who I don't know if he is or was, well, he's currently a prosecutor for the Southern District of New York, and they've got him as the head of the investigation, and he actually has very close ties with Epstein. And so that is becoming even more and more clouded. It reminds me of JFK and that Warner Commission, who was put as head of that. So it's very conspicuous as to what's really going on. But Massey indicates that the Attorney General may withhold or redact portions of the record that would jeopardize an active federal investigation or ongoing prosecution, providing that such withholding is narrowly tailored and temporary. So if there is a new investigation, according to even what Thomas Massey has indicated, they can just make it brand new and completely start all over.
Mm-hmm.
So they talk about how, we probably will never know. And then they bring out Lex Wexner's,
Mm-hmm.
how he was real close to Epstein. So, it just kind of remains to be seen how it's really going to turn out. So we can have cheerleaders jumping up and down. Yay. Let's see them. And yet, truth of the fact is, we may not, according to them.
Oops, we lost you, Connie.
Uh-oh.
There
There
you
you
are.
are.
Okay. Sorry. So we'll just see, how it all plays out.
That's true. That's true. So let's look at Amanda Grace's prophecy. This is really important to go listen to it for yourselves. It was actually yesterday that she talked about the resignations and all that was going on. She started putting it all together and trying to say, look, some of the things from Marjorie Taylor Greene resigning to Mundami and Trump meeting, interestingly enough, and all of that is things that we're seeing playing out biblically again. And she says we've got to be, really conscious of what time frame we're in, because Robin Bullock keeps on telling us we've got to pay attention to time frames. Amanda is too. So she wrote in the prophecy, she said both Trump and Mondami were elected by focusing on the cost of living. And that's kind of a funny thing, but it is.
Yeah, it is true.
But some of their ideas are not the same ideas about how to fix the cost of living. Okay. So, but she could say that's a common thing. She said, but she has a question. What really happened behind the scenes in that meeting? That leaves her at a question. Okay. So the whole meeting and everything happening in New York and connected to the timeline. She says we are in the book of Esther. And she used Esther 3 1 through 2 at first about King Xerxes, okay, promoted Haman, okay, and Haman was the son of an Agite. Well, if you actually trace Haman's bloodline, he goes into who God told the children of Israel, don't let them survive, destroy that group. I love me anyway, just go read the Old Testament, okay? So basically, um, if King Saul, who God told him to destroy the Agites, that who Haman was a descendant of, there wouldn't have been a Haman in the story. Okay. But Mordecai was from the tribe of Benjamin. She talks about that. But here it is. It is the king, it is the president or whoever promoting the wrong person. Okay. And that's something she talks about in her prophecy. At different times, Trump has gotten the wrong information. And I think that's really important to look at. Okay. So, yeah, there it is. Okay. You can see it on your screen. Okay. So basically, she says you can get the word Haman out of Mondami's first and last name put together. And you can also take Catherine, I'm not sure how to pronounce her name, the present governor of New York, Kathleen, and put their two names together and you get Amalek. And it was the Amalekites that God told King Saul to destroy, and he didn't. That Haman was a descendant of. But also, she took the Republican lady, Elise Marie, and I don't know, STEP. Say it, Connie.
Stefanik.
Okay. And she put her and the present governor of New York's names, and she looked at those and she said, you can get Esther and Susa out of the two names. Well, Esther, we know Queen Esther in the story. We know Susa is where they were in Persia at that time. So it's really interesting. President Donald Trump and Mandami and the White House equals like the capital of where they were. So she goes on with several other scriptures. You can listen to this, you can get the scriptures that she's talking about, but she's really emphasizing the timeline that we're in. And she just asks the question, okay, is there a Mordecai that will arise in New York? Is there a Mordecai that's going to come up and come against this Haman? So that's what she's looking for. But it's Esther that gets the ear of the king in this whole series of anything. It's the lady. So she says to keep this in mind. It's being prophetically played out between the two moons. But we have blood moons. So actually, in Purim 2025, we had a blood moon. In Purim 2026, which is on March the 3rd, we will have our next blood moon. And all of this is being played out between the two blood moons. And so Marjorie Taylor Greene, bring this into her. Her even stepping down is a prophetic timeline. She's doing this between the two blood moons. She's choosing to resign right after the Epstein files come out, and it's between the two blood moons. Okay. She goes on to talk about Marjorie feels that she is doing everything to push Trump and Trump's bills, but she's still taking the hard earned money because she will not resign until her fifth year. And that is January, the whatever day she chose to resign, makes her
January 1st.
makes her fifth year in Congress, and that's the day she resigns. So she'll leave with a full pension. That's very interesting.
Of
Okay,
course.
of course. Okay, so basically, That is something that we've got to look at, okay? And she adds this up. So basically, she's pointing out that Marjorie Taylor Greene makes her month and her name, and it equals to 911. Okay, so all of these months are equaling to 911, and that is being here. But let's go back to Marjorie Taylor Greene, because this is her point in all of this. Okay. She takes Marjorie Taylor Greene's name, and then she says U.S. House of Representative, and it makes Queen Vestite's name. You know how she goes and pulls the letters
Mm-hmm.
out? Well, she got the Queen's name. In Esther 1 through 4, that was the Queen that had to be removed for Esther to come. So she's asking the question, is Marjorie Taylor Greene being pushed out for the true Esther to arise? It's been prophesied that an Esther would arise. And the prophecy on Esther to arise, and I know if you go back to Kim Clement's prophecy, it will be after the nation has been in turmoil. This Esther comes up to heal the nation. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you have to catch those words of the prophecy. But what actually she is suggesting in this prophecy is Marjorie Taylor being pushed out for the true Esther to arise, the true mouthpiece. So I'm wondering, this is just me, this is absolutely not a prophetic word. I'm wondering if the Esther that was prophesied by Kim Clement comes through Congress in some of these positions that are now open. Just a thought. And just has me questioning. She goes on to talk about Candace Owen, okay? And she said that what we're coming up with different people saying that they're being threatened, their lives are being threatened, assassination plots, and all of the above. That also ties into basically what was going on in the time of Esther, where you had different assassination plots being taken. So this is a really good prophecy to get into. It's one that'll make you think about what's really going on. So who's got a thought on this one?
Tell you this, the person that is for the Republican ticket that is set to run for her seat, because the way that Georgia is set up, her seat is not an appointed position. There will be a special election held, and Governor Kemp will actually have 10 days to um, set the election. So you will see the election time set and everything by the 15th of January. And the lady that is confirmed for the lady out of the 5 people that are already confirmed to run under the Republican ticket is a businesswoman by the name of Star Black.
Okay. Do we
So,
know anything about Star yet?
Star Black, don't know a lot about her. She's a businesswoman that just basically came out and she's running for that seat. So let me get this right here. Let me get this put up for everybody to be able to see. Let me get this, give me 3 seconds and I'll have it put up here. So this is Miss Star Black right here. There we are.
Oh, she's running as a Republican. Okay.
Mm-hmm. She's running as a Republican, and she's the only woman that is um, currently currently in the Republican ticket to take that seat. She is a 28-year retired veteran from FEMA. So that is the her public service is 28 years with FEMA.
Okay, well, we
So
need
she is pushing integrity and term limits. She is for part of her stance is for growing small businesses and increasing not pay, but increasing higher paying jobs, the ability for higher paying jobs to be implemented. So to build a small businesses so that those small businesses can begin offering higher paying jobs.
well,
And then one of her personal initiatives is supporting caregivers, especially via nonprofit churches and private foundations and private services.
interesting. So, intercessors, y'all need to look into her. You need to see who's behind her, not just what she's putting out there publicly, but we need to take a look and who's behind her. That would be
Mhm.
interesting.
And for the last 17 years, as an entrepreneur and businesswoman, she owns in her district, she owns the FedEx routes. And for some people that might not know that, the FedEx, UPS, Amazon, and all these other companies actually sell their routes to individuals, just like Frito-Lay does for their chip trucks. You can go in and you can buy that route. You can put in the trucks, you can put in the employees, and that's actually your business. And you become a subcontractor to FedEx, Amazon, UPS, or other companies like that. And so for the last 17 years, she has owned the FedEx routes in her district.
That's interesting. Well,
So that is who is currently running for to fill Marjorie Taylor Greene's slot. That is a woman.
okay. Well, we are watching. And everybody take time to read this prophecy or not read it. Well, it is on uh, Amanda Grace's website, but I would listen to it and also and get the effects of what she's talking about as she gives
Mhm.
it. Okay, so Connie, anything else? You got to unmute.
Yeah. Am I unmuted? Thank you.
Mhm.
Susie Wiles, you mentioned her,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to bring up one little thing just to kind of add. Just seemingly, she was, in agreement with Elon Musk, who also happened to appear with President Trump and this recent dinner that they had with the prince, right?
Say it again. We lost you on that one.
Okay. Susie Wiles, I just want to bring her up because you had mentioned her, how she was in agreement with Elon Musk.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to just mention that she is referred to as the Ice Maiden
Yes.
Mhm.
with respect to Clayton Morris and Mike, the health ranger. I can't recall his last name at the moment. But they did talk about how they think that she is the gatekeeper, how she is the one who determines who says what, where you can go, what news station you can speak with, and seemingly kind of really having the authority to hold RFK back from doing what he would like to do, even Dr. Oz. Um, so I do find that very interesting. I mean, she's kind of navigates through the vaccine alliance, Pfizer. She promotes the companies that have the pesticides and herbicides. So I'm not quite 100% sure if she's all who she um, presents to be, but there is a little bit of a concern with respect to Susie Wiles being the gatekeeper and also the Ice Maiden, stopping things, not allowing things to take place that could
Yeah.
be.
And I will agree with Connie because it's so important as intercessors. We pray for the gatekeepers around our leaders because they're influencing our leaders on what they hear, what information gets to them, if it's the right information or not. And that's a huge prayer point on who
Mhm.
really, and sometimes we're just praying for the leader without praying for what's around the leader.
Mhm. And speaking
Mhm.
of that, I saw something just recently. I don't know who it was, but just the questioning, where is this faith-based group? Where are they? That are under, supposedly surrounding Trump. Like, where are they? We don't really see a whole lot of them. And, we keep, it seems like getting into more critical times. So, I mean, I think it's a good question. Where are they? What are they doing? Who are
That's good. Okay, Sonia, can you give us a prophetic summary of tonight? You're shaking your head. So, what do you see with all that we've been over?
A scrambled egg.
I love it.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
I definitely agree. They've been scrambling eggs. That's a good prophetic summary.
Yep.
Okay, well, Shane, you got anything else?
Not really, but I will tell you this as far as um, where we're headed economically right now, we're on the correct path. Just like I mentioned earlier, even though you see a lot of roadblocks along the way, I think as kind of understanding where we are and understanding we are finally moving in the right direction, those roadblocks are going to need to be prayed through. Intercessors are going to have to work to get those roadblocks out of the way. And I think part of that roadblocks is you're going to see a lot more resignations than what we've seen.
Wow, this is a
And I
lot of.
think you're gonna see a lot more between now and New Year's. And I'm not talking just Congress either. I mean, when we had the Epstein list come out, what did we have? We had, high net worth, high
they?
position individuals, right down to people that were working with OpenAI that were resigning because they were a part of the Epstein deal.
Harry's.
Um, yes, and I think you're going to see more and more of that. I think you're going to see more people resigning because they're basically going to get caught with their hand in a cookie jar if they don't resign.
Hmm.
And I think we've just hit the tip of the iceberg.
Right. And so, what we've said about the elections here is also another important point. Intercessors, you've got to get on this. I mean, we have 22 Republican seats that have got to be taken for the Lord. They cannot let them go. And I'm just thinking in my head, um, if the elections were in November of 2026 and you only prayed about it with a team and went somewhere and prayed one time a month, well, you've got only like 11 months left before that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Even the 2026 elections that's coming up, 2026 and 2027 are critical years for all elect states, as far as midterms, as far as um, who's elected. Then you'll have sheriff's elections in between that and county elections. So we're at a critical point. It's not a time to back out. You need to grab a hold to this. You need to get focused on what's going on, and you need to pray. And you don't wait till the day of the election or the week before the election to organize. Start now. Get focused on it. Get the heart of God on what He wants, and whoever God is wanting, find out between the Father and you what He wants, and pray. Get groups going and get groups praying. Anything else anybody wants to sum up? Well, we appreciate you joining us. I hope we've answered a lot of questions that I got texts and comments and emails about. You can join us next week. Yeah, we'll be back next week on Rumble. Yes, you can join us on Rumble next week. Give us a thumbs up. If you want the show notes, I've put it out there. put your email address in the comments and we'll send you the show notes so you can read them for yourself. We got all the stuff in the show notes, not just talking points. And so we'll be glad to share that with you. And join us again. Share the program. And good night, everybody.
Good night,
Shalom.
everyone. Thank you for joining.